Welcome, Podcrushers. Oh, it's weird doing it live and saying it to camera. I don't like that. I like it even less now, saying Podcrushers that way.
Say it to Chase.
Guys, we have today, what we're doing is a first for us and a first for him. The first for us is that we're doing a live intro before the interview, which is where it belongs.
Yeah.
So we've finally gotten
3
our ish in
seasons
order.
in. Yeah.
Chase, Stokes, you, my friend, this is your first podcast, is it not?
You were breaking me in.
All right,
This is my
great.
first one.
So you might know Chase as John B. on the smash hit on Netflix, Outer Banks. He's also got 3 films coming out. Well, actually, Uglies, which is out now by the time this comes out. Also, Marked Men and Valiant Ones. So, so your star is on the rise. We won't talk about your rising sign. We've already,
He doesn't know
we've
it.
already established he doesn't know it, and we don't want to know it.
Yeah, that's right.
We're ambivalent about astrology here. We just lost and gained.
There's, you have to
Yeah.
cut
Listeners.
down. I definitely will not
Canceled
make the
right
final
off the
edit.
bat.
I said ambivalent, okay? I said ambivalent.
Great
Keep
word.
it moving.
Chase, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome to Podcrushed. We're your hosts. I'm Penn,
I'm Nava.
And I'm Sophie.
and I think we could have been your middle school besties.
Psych, you suck. So mean.
I don't know how much you know about what we do here, but we like to start at 12 because of this uniquely transformative period where, before it, you're a child. After adolescence, after coming of age, you are an adult, no matter how young you might feel, right? Like, I still feel like I'm growing up. But can you give us a snapshot of Chase at 12? Like, what was home like? What was school like? How were you seeing the world?
12 years old. Gosh, that was a very confusing time in life. I played ice hockey in the Southeast, which is already just the weirdest contrast.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. And you were very serious, right?
I was, yeah. So my stepdad, he's from Minnesota. He was kind of like this pride and joy of the town he came from, played in college, had a really crazy injury, and he passed it on to me. And it became my first love and was my first love for a long time. So I would practice all week long, and then on the weekends we would go like upstate New York. We would go to Minnesota. We would go to all of these places, obviously not in the South where they don't play a lot of hockey. So I didn't have a great friend group outside of sports. So it was that. And then also that was a time where I was, I think, old enough to understand that there was marital issues between my mom and dad. So there was that kind of through line at 12 years old. And I was the oldest I had 2 brothers and a sister. So it was kind of taking on like a parental role at a very young age too.
Even so, sports were sounds like they were kind of dominating a lot of your life, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, and you also played lacrosse later. You like broke your sternum. You just sound like a very physical.
I tried to play lacrosse. So after I had, I think it was 8 concussions playing hockey.
Whoa! And when did the first one happen? Do you think?
Probably around 13, 14.
Really?
I would say. But then after that all ended, I decided I wanted to play a high school sport. And I had missed football tryouts. And I had a couple buddies who played lacrosse. And they were like, you should give it a shot. It's like hockey and soccer and basketball. And I was like, well, I suck at the other 2. But I'll give it a shot. And I made the team and tried. And I think it was the second week of practice, this kid hit me directly in the sternum with a lacrosse ball and cracked my sternum.
With the ball?
Yeah.
I was thinking you got a shoulder to the sternum.
No, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he just hit me in the chest with a ball. A little cracked sternum.
Wow.
I wasn't necessarily the most athletic. I think it was just, it's what I knew in that space. If you were to give me a basketball or a football, it looked pretty absurd. So I kind of just found the lane that I think that I was decent at.
Yeah, right.
And then getting into the whole world of the arts, I was such a late bloomer in that. It was not anywhere on the radar of something that was even a feasible career choice or a hobby at the time.
What do you feel like you thought about? Like, were there movies or books or any music that was really resonating with you at that time?
So it's interesting because my stepdad was also a DJ. So he worked for a radio station. We lived in Atlanta. for about 10 years. And he used to do the weekend DJ parties for the radio station. So I used to sit under his DJ setup and listen. And he would be like, what do you think the BPM is? And I'm like,
Wow.
96. And he would be like,
Wrong,
pick a
it's
song.
103.
He's like, you're fired. Go back to the truck and go think about your choices.
Yeah.
And so I really was infatuated with music from a young age. But I think it wasn't until high school that I really saw that there was that world. But hockey was my intro to it, because you'd go on these flights or you'd get on a bus for 12 hours and you have to occupy your time. And as the youngest kid on a team, you don't really talk to the older guys because you're not cool yet. And so I would just watch movies and I would watch TV shows. And that was my safe space during those years. I never had an idea or an inkling that would be my intro into the world. But looking back, I think that much consumption over that period of time in life was absolutely what I think subconsciously drew me to.
What TV shows were you watching?
Ooh, SpongeBob, Rocco's Modern Life.
Oh, Rocco's Modern
That's
Life.
cartoon.
Wow.
Great one. Yeah.
That's from when I mean, I was there for when it was airing, on the day live.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird show.
Very weird.
Yeah.
Ooh, very weird.
Early shows that I watched. It's weird in now doing a film that's in the dystopian world. I would like rewatch Hunger Games and rewatch Divergent, and then I got into, really truthfully, like fell in love with Indiana Jones, and that was where
Can I ask which one?
Raiders. Raiders has always been the go-to, and I just wanted to be some form of Indiana Jones in my teenage years.
Well, actually, Trace, I was going to ask because 8 concussions, I feel like I would have
Yes.
quit it the first, maybe the
Sure.
second. So I wanted to know, what's your relationship with fear?
It's a great question. I think I run towards it still. I think I'm at number 3 in total concussions with Outer Banks.
Oh my God.
so
By the way, I
kind
want to
of-
say
We
that's not
definitely have to get
surprising.
into that.
Having Nava has seen the whole series. I just started as having you on. We'll talk about this later, but it's a very physical role, which I don't know that anybody viewing would think about, and I can appreciate how incredibly demanding that is to perform through that. So I do want to get into that, but I guess like running towards fear.
Yeah.
Do you have some sense of where that might come from as you were growing up?
Yeah, I think there was just a lot of uncertainty in my life from a very young age. Whether it be going through, like I was talking about, with divorce and kind of being the black sheep, so to speak, in my family. Like I'm the only one from my biological father. And so I always felt a little bit outside of the loop of life in general. And so I just think that I found comfortability in trying things, and failing wasn't so much of a failure. It was more of a learning experience. And I understood that really early. So in talking about fear and running towards it, I think there's more of an excitement with it than there is a nervous energy.
Yeah.
And that's just with fear. But I think in our industry, there's 1,000 things to be nervous about. Yeah.
Chase, you mentioned being the oldest sibling and that kind of pushing you into a parent role. But I'm curious, when you were younger, maybe outside of your parents, did you have anybody who could kind of guide you, mentor you, or was a role model for you?
My grandmother, for sure. When my mom and my dad got divorced, we moved into a retirement community, essentially. So,
And you were very young then, right?
Very young.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we lived there till I think I was 8 or 9 years old. So a lot of those early life lessons were from women in my life. So that was mentor, mother number 2. Who taught me a lot about how to walk and talk.
Were you the only kid in this retirement community?
Yeah, I had like 38 pairs of grandparents. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm so
Like, it
curious
was
about
so-
that upbringing. That's amazing.
Everybody's like, oh, that must have sucked. And I'm like, actually, it's pretty sweet. Like everybody has golf carts. Everybody's super nice.
Right.
It's a clubhouse where you just go and get food, and a swimming pool with a bunch of old people.
And then it sounds like it sounds like your stepdad was very present in your life. I suppose until your teen years. I'm a stepfather and a biological father. I understand the unique dynamics at every kind of, you want to call them blended families or whatever they might be, step families. It sounds to me like, like you really looked up to your stepdad as well. Is that maybe an overstatement?
No, yeah.
I'm not hopeful as a stepdad because I'm like, listen, I know my limits.
Right.
Okay. I know them well. But it's sweet that you adopted hockey and this experience you had of like going to the radio station, as you said. I mean, that I'm just kind of interested in that relationship there.
Yeah, I think not having a father figure as a young man is a confusing time, and getting into your teenage years, or even understanding what it is to be a young man, it was kind of cool because he was the guy who played the very masculine sport. He was the guy who knew all the cool music as an adult. Like he would teach me about like what the top 40 songs are. And so I did. I think it was just a beautiful blend. And he never, I'm very thankful because he never ever made it a thing to be a step parent. He was just dad from the beginning.
That's really,
and he still is. Like he still is.
Yeah.
There's never been that separation. We've had our ups and downs for a number of reasons as you go through life, but it was never a step parent. My siblings are not half siblings to me or step siblings to me. They're my siblings. It is the most beautiful. I'm very fortunate that we are all super, super close in that respect.
That's awesome.
Chase, you seem to be particularly close with your mom. I
Super
feel like
close.
I've heard you describe yourself as a mama's boy.
I am a mama's boy.
Can you share
Yes,
like a
very much
couple
so.
of really memorable experiences you had with her as a tween, or things that stand out to you?
I remember being a young, like when you hit puberty and you start getting hair in places that you don't traditionally see hair on your body at.
Yeah.
I was close enough to my mom to where I was like, Mom, what do I do? Like, this is weird. And she was so cool about it. Like as a mother, to be able to have that conversation with a young boy,
Yeah.
I will never forget that because I just, that's where a dad would step in. Right?
Yeah,
That's where a dad would come in and teach you those things. I think it's just layered with her telling me and showing up in spaces where I don't think she knew how to show up for herself. And we have had that conversation as time has passed. Like she just wanted to be a mom. I had that conversation with my grandmother too. I said, what did my mom want to be when she grew up? She goes, a mother. And so in knowing that, it's hard to just pinpoint a specific instance because my whole life is riddled with how my mom just always showed up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Very lucky.
That's Were you going a lot between Florida and?
So I have a very confusing from birth
Georgia? Is Georgia
to
the
high
other?
school.
That's at least okay.
I was born in Annapolis, Maryland, and then we moved.
I was born in Baltimore and lived in Annapolis for a few years.
No shit.
So
Where-
as
where in
a
Annapolis?
child, I don't even know. I was 2.
He made that up. That's why he can't.
But my
It's
whole
like, I don't know, I
family,
was
both sides of
lying.
my family are
Okay.
Maryland.
Yeah, so a lot of them are on the Eastern Shore and Baltimore area, actually. And then we moved. We moved down to South Florida, St. Louis, Missouri, then Atlanta, and I did elementary, middle school into high school, and just outside of Atlanta.
Okay.
And then I went from there to Orlando, and then back to Atlanta, and then back to Orlando, and then that's where I finished.
So with all that moving, I would imagine, friendships are important at every age, but especially as you're going through this formative time of adolescence. It's like, or if you don't have them, like for instance, I didn't have a lot of them because I moved at 12 to LA and started acting. But the ones that you make, they can be so impactful. Yeah. Or the fact that you don't have a lot of them can be impactful. I'm curious, especially because you're talking about so many positive, like female role models and influences in your life. Like, were most of your friends boys? Were they girls? Like, whatever it be, there's always a dynamic there. Did you see any patterns looking back?
Absolutely. I still actually, my best friend from elementary school is still one of my closest friends on this planet.
That's cool.
I actually introduced him to his girlfriend in 5th grade. They're now married with 2
That's
beautiful
crazy.
babies.
Wow.
And so Lee, and then also one of my dear friends, Drew, we all met in 4th grade. And we still talk to this day.
That's
nice.
rad.
Really nice,
And through all that moving as well.
Yeah, it was kind of a complex, but that was the safe space. I think when you're at that age, you cling so tightly, especially with so much movement. No matter where you go, you hold on to whatever you can, and you hold on so tight. And just like any relationship in life, it ebbs and flows. But we had a group chat started really recently of photos that they had found in a shoebox of us all through elementary school.
Wow.
And it was so nostalgic. And just wild to think, holy shit, like we really have kept this going for this many years. So I don't think, I never really gravitated towards women in friendships. I gravitated because I already had that. I had it in my mother. I had it in my grandmother, and they were so present. And I think I just wanted to be a boy.
Yeah.
And I was so influenced by the women in my life that I think there was a very confusing thing. Like, can I fit in with the cool kids, or do I fit in with boys? How does this work? How do I develop these relationships? So that was, I'm very thankful that I did have, you know, my sort of pillars of men in my life from a young age. I say that as we're all boys.
Yeah,
but.
yeah. You have like a sweetness and a gentleness to you in person. And I could imagine that as a young boy, other boys might pick on you for that.
Absolutely.
Is that something you experienced? Were you bullied? Do you have
I
any?
was.
Yeah.
Because I was at the time, it was just the blanket term was he's a feminine boy. And I think now I've registered it more as I'm more in touch with my emotions. But I got my ass kicked quite a few times in middle school and throughout that time. And even with hockey, being a not super toxic masculine man in a very masculine environment of testosterone. I was 15, 14 playing with 18 to 20-year-old guys. So I was constantly surrounded by that and picked on a lot. But yeah, definitely not a fun thing.
I was watching a trailer for your movie that just came out, Uglies, and it has a really interesting premise where at 16 you get this surgery and you become pretty. And it made me wonder about your own middle school experiences. In your teen years, did you feel pretty? What were your experiences around like your image?
When did you get all this work done? I guess is what I'm trying to understand.
Started around the pandemic. I found it, and it's been a fucking fun journey. No, I didn't grow vertically till the end of my junior year in high school. I battled crazy cystic acne all through middle school, like covering my back, covering my chest, all on my face. I'm terrified of needles, so I never did the Accutane journey. My mom tried to do every topical you could ever imagine. And then I just realized it was hormonal, and that's being a boy, and you just grow out of it over time. But I didn't feel pretty. I didn't feel attractive. I didn't feel any of those qualities. So in reference to Uglies, it was something that was kind of easy to tap into for me. Not fun, but it was, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. 13-year-old me would totally resonate with this film.
Yeah. Are there any like stories you can think of? Because I just feel like for me personally, middle school, adolescence, like some of the first memories that come to mind are around how I felt about my body, about my image, how I looked, and like, you know, little comments that the person making them would never in a million years remember making that comment. But for me, it like stuck with me for years. I'm wondering if you have any anecdotes like that.
I have a very distinct memory, kind of going back to the bullying. I sat next to this girl. Her name was Ashley, for the sake of sakes being. And she was very kind to me. And I think that was part of the energy of being raised by women. And we walked out of class and she said, "Hey, thank you so much for your help," and walked away. And her boyfriend was also in the class, unbeknownst to me. And he grabbed me like straight out of a coming of age movie by the straps of my backpack and slammed me into the lockers and said, "Don't ever talk to her again."
Wow.
Whoa.
And that was one of those pivotal moments, I think, for me to say, oh, okay, got it. Like I'm not a part of the cool crowd. I'm not with the cool kids. But it was enough for me to understand my lane. It was enough for me to say, okay, all right, well, now I have to figure out how to not navigate and get my ass kicked by this guy. I just thought this girl was being kind and understanding friendship at a young age. It wasn't like I thought she was cute or I was trying to steal his girlfriend. In middle school, I was just acknowledging her as a human. But that was one of those moments for me that was really, I think, identifying of kind of turning into a little bit of an introvert and not externally giving too much at that point, I think was one of those moments in life that really kind of shook me to my core.
This show is brought to you by Symbiotica. I started taking Symbiotica because I was honestly feeling a little bit burnt out and I knew that I needed to make a change. I figured that covering my bases in terms of supplements would be a good place to start and just help kick off like a new upward trend in my life, one where I'm taking care of my health. And I have noticed a positive impact. Since taking their products, I've noticed that I'm sleeping a little bit better. I have a pep in my step. I have a little bit more energy throughout the day. And I also just know that I'm doing something good, and that does something good for me mentally. Symbiotica is formulated with the highest quality ingredients out there. They're transparent about how and where they source ingredients to ensure that you get the best product possible. Their formulas don't have any seed oils, preservatives, toxins, artificial additives, or natural flavors. I take the super greens, which I love. I put it in my water and I like the taste of all of their supplements. So feel more energized, alert, and balanced with high quality supplements that work. Head over to symbiotica.com/podcrushed for 20% off plus free shipping on your subscription order. That's symbiotica.com/podcrushed.
This episode is brought to you by No CD. We dive into awkward moments quite a bit here on Podcrushed, you might know, but today I want to focus on a different kind of discomfort. It's the feeling that comes from persistent, intrusive thoughts that take over your mind. Maybe it's the endless urge to double-check your messages to be sure you didn't say something off, or heading back into the kitchen multiple times just to confirm the stove is off. These thoughts aren't fleeting. They're part of a recurring cycle. And they could be signs of obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. OCD is often misunderstood, but the reality is that it can attach itself to anything you care deeply about, make everyday life feel overwhelming. And the good news is that OCD is highly treatable with the right kind of therapy. No CD offers virtual therapy specifically designed to help you reclaim your life from OCD. Their licensed therapists are trained in exposure and response prevention therapy, or ERP, a specialized approach that targets OCD at its core. No CD also accepts many major insurance plans and provides always-on support between therapy sessions. So to learn more about therapy with No CD, go to nocd.com and schedule a free 15-minute call with their team. That's nocd.com to learn more and book a free 15-minute call.
Chase, we are always curious about people's first experiences with crushes or love, heartbreak. Do you have any memorable?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've always been a little bit of a hopeless romantic. But I remember it was fourth grade. And I didn't know how to broach that feeling, that like ooey gooey, I think I like you type of thing. And I remember I had wrote, because it was at the time where everybody's like, I heart whatever their girlfriend's name were and boyfriend. And it was like a whole thing at this school I was at. And I did it. And I hadn't even approached her to tell her.
Wow.
I just thought like the act of doing this would be really courageous and maybe she'd think it was really sweet. And it did not work at all. She came up to me and said, I actually like somebody else. And it was kind of an interesting feeling because you kind of feel yourself crumble for a second. But then there's the freedom of saying like, oh, okay. Well, what can I do to make you not like this guy? Like, what can I do to be the fun one?
You're resilient.
So
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah,
Running towards fear.
Yeah. And we ended up, I think in fifth or sixth grade, we had like a little fling. And then I got my heart just ripped out of my chest. There was a new kid that came to school.
Those new kids.
Yeah. And he was a man, you know, like one of those kids that has facial hair before everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And I found out that she had been hanging out with him outside of school. Mind you, we're in fifth grade. So like, what does that even mean? I don't know.
It means they were actually just hanging out.
They probably were. They were probably just talking. And I passed a note in our fifth grade math class. And I like used cursed words in the note. And it got picked up by the teacher.
Oh, no.
And it was the first time that I had gotten in trouble in school. And he was like, look, I get it. Love is hard. And I'm sure your heart hurts, but you can't tell her to go fuck herself, like.
That's actually amazing that the teacher intercepted it and then that they had that sweet interaction with you.
Yeah. His name was Mr. Green, actually. It's weird how you remember
Shout
those
out,
things.
Mr. Green.
Yeah. No, really.
Wherever you are in the world, Mr. Green. Thanks for that.
Aw.
Yeah. But that was, I think, the first time where I felt both sides of the emotion with the same person. Getting rejected into finding a way to make it work and then getting your heart broken and it all happening within like a very short period of time.
Chase, Kelsea has told an amazing story on a different podcast about the first time you guys met in person.
Yes.
And in that story, you're like incredibly bold. And I'm curious, I mean, would love to hear it from your perspective, but
Or
also.
you could just go listen to that podcast.
Yeah, notice I didn't name the podcast. I keep the listens on our show. But I'm just curious, when did you start to become really bold and in like love and in romantic situations?
Oh, I was sweating profusely leading up to that moment. Like that.
Okay.
That
With
is
Kelsea, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So she's told the story about how she had DM'd me. I was doing this movie with Nick Cassavetes, who directed The Notebook. We were shooting in Bulgaria. And so towards the end of the filming process, a freak situation happened. I got staph. I was in the hospital and I hadn't responded to her in a little while. And I finally got back to her and I was like, hey, I'm so sorry I didn't text you back. I was in the hospital with staph. She's like, yeah, sure. Staph, right?
Like, who gets staph these days?
Like you're doing a movie. How does that happen?
Yeah.
And then I left and then we kind of were texting back and forth for a while. I'd always go back home after I shoot and stay with my mom for a little bit. And then when I got to LA, I had just walked in the door and she goes, I think it's so interesting that we're in the same city. And I told her I was going to take her on the date the next night. She goes, and you're not here. And I just said, fuck it, go, do it, get in the car and go. And so I just said, drop a pin. And I drove down.
Wow. I mean, both of you were bold in
Yeah,
that
I love
situation.
that.
I feel like she was
I love
bold.
Kelsea calling you out.
She is such a
Yeah.
force of nature.
Yeah.
She's such a bold human being and she's so honest. And it's something that I've really, really learned over the past almost 2 years of being not just more honest externally, but internally with whatever you want. Like if you want that shit, go get it.
Yeah.
If you want to go chase the big giant career, then go chase it. Or if you want to sit at home and pick your nose and watch a TV show, like also that's totally okay. And so I just said, I have to match this energy. Like I really like this girl. I haven't met her and this is a weird feeling. And so I'm driving. I lived kind of like up off Woodrow Wilson and I was driving down the 405 and I'm like, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to pass out. Like, this girl's so beautiful. She's like been super funny. What if all of the things that have happened through this phone don't add up in person? I'm going to just lose my shit. So I got there and I was like, okay, Chase, you have to figure this out. You have to pull something out of your ass right now to make this work. And I sat in the car and I saw her come up the stairs and she was wearing like a white pleather fit. And I looked and the valet guy is looking at me. He's like, hey man, can I park your car? And I was like, dude, I just need like 30 seconds to get my shit together. He's like, are you all right? I'm like, and I literally just confessed to this valet guy. I was like, hey man, I've never met this girl, but I really
so
like
endearing.
her. And she's right there. Yes, the one in the all white with the blonde hair. I just need to get my shit together so I can make sure that this works. And he's like, you got it, man.
Aw.
Oh.
And I was like, whew, okay. And so I just pulled the most unconventional move of all time. And I just grabbed her and I kissed her and I said, thank God you're real.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even said, hi, I'm Chase. Nice to
Wow.
officially meet you. And I just remember walking in after I did that and I was like, where the fuck did that come from, dude?
The valet
What
guy
was
was
that?
right.
Yeah, that was not on SpongeBob.
Yeah, just
not
like-
on.
It's like, all right.
Yeah. And she was like, something about that level of confidence was, she was like, it was the most attractive thing. And I'm like, I don't know where that came from. I think I blacked out. I think I fully blacked out and
That's
just committed
amazing.
to the bit. And then, yeah, the rest is kind of history.
Well,
That's really
she
sweet.
allowed you to be that way. Actually, I was just watching Dune 2 with my husband last night, and there's a scene
I see the
where,
connection.
where,
Yeah.
where
I am the worm.
No, listen, where Zendaya says to Timothée Chalamet something like,
Use their character names.
I can't remember.
Does anybody know their names?
Chani and Paul. Okay,
She just
Chani-
watched it too.
Chani
well.
says to Paul something like, like, will you stay with me forever? And he says, like, as long as I breathe. And I was like, you never say things like that to me. And he's like, well, you never say things like that to me. And I was
Meanwhile,
like,
guys, could you just wait a
need to
second?
allow each other. you need to.
That's true.
Yeah. She let you do that.
30 minutes later, though, he's like marrying somebody else. Sorry, spoiler. Yep, oopsies.
Oh wait, I haven't finished it yet.
You haven't finished it? When did this happen?
It's a long movie.
She's doing chunks of Dune too.
Yeah.
30 minute
She's
intervals.
watching it on TikTok.
What do you think Florence Pugh is doing there?
30-second
10 minutes.
intervals.
Wait, I'm so mad.
Surprise.
Yeah, it's really disappointing.
That is
Like,
actually
my
a huge
heart sank.
spoiler. We'll definitely have to cut that.
Okay, well,
I
anyway.
think it's reason enough.
We're not worried about spoiling Dune 2.
It's pretty
Everybody
I think
already
it's-
seen it. It's
We'll
made
get
$700
back.
billion.
I think everybody saw it 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but the point was just that, like, you were able to be bold in a way that you hadn't been before because Kelsea was bold too. Like, you were going to
Yeah.
match her energy.
You were able to be bold like Paul was to Chani.
Yes.
To Chani.
Johnny,
Yeah.
As long
And
as
Chani
I
was bold to
live.
Paul, too. They're
Yeah.
bold together.
It's just
It's a prophet couple.
It
It
is.
was really
You're right.
nice to hear your side of the
7.
story because when Kelsea told it on Call Her Daddy, and it's a great story when she tells it too, it just, you sound so confident that you wouldn't know all the stuff that was happening prior to that.
I was
so
shitting
it's
my
really
pants.
sweet to
I was
hear.
so scared. I was so scared. I was so terrified. Dating is a terrible space. Like it's the most
Oh, yeah.
terrifying thing. And I just was like, please let this work for all things living. And it did. And it's been like really the greatest chapter of life. Truthfully.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
really sweet.
So the moral of the story is you go to Call Her Daddy for Chase Stokes, the hero.
Yeah.
You come to Podcrushed for Chase Stokes,
Yeah.
the sensitive introvert,
Get the,
right?
get the honesty
You know,
of it.
I mean,
Yeah.
call it like you want to see it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I did have one question about your relationship with Kelsea, and feel free to give as little
Sure.
as you want, but
Or as much
or as
as you
much,
want.
yeah.
Pick your poison. Pick your poison.
Nava, the businesswoman. She came on Podcrushed, and she's one of our favorites.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. I feel like with every relationship, you learn something new about
Yeah.
love or about connection. And I'm wondering if there's something you feel you've learned with Kelsea that you could share.
Oh, I think, especially with having big careers, there's so much opportunity to misstep or to forget or get lazy because there's so much happening. And it's been a chapter of life where you actively choose to show up every day. And I think, especially with the world that we're in, you have so much just handed to you so often that you can get in a state of mind to where you can get really lazy. And it's just not a relationship where you can do that. And I've been so fortunate that we have met each other in the middle of how we show up for this relationship, how we show up for each other in big moments and in little moments. And it's been a product of going through previous relationships and them not working and then reevaluating and seeing, not to shout her records title out, but like it's acknowledging patterns from times past and how do we take the good from those and the bad from those and rewrite sort of the reality of what now is. And she's just somebody who has made me show up in a better way than I ever have. And it is through like having to show up for a relationship in times where it's not easy. It's like taking a flight, a red eye, like you were talking about, and getting on that plane and showing up when you know your person needs you. Or vice versa. Like she has done the same thing. It is such an equal playing field. And so I think that's something that I've really learned because it's so easy to just be like, I'm tired, or I'll see you in 2 days, but it's been 3 weeks, Sometimes you just do it and it ends up being the best thing you could ever do, not just for yourself, but for your person. So
Drop a pin.
drop the damn pin.
I was watching your GQ interview, like 10 Things I Can't Live Without. I think it was from 3 years ago.
Yes.
And you had rainbow flip-flops.
Yes.
And in the video, you say that you were running away from cops in these, and you're going to leave it at that. And I wanted to know if we could go a little further. Like, why were you running away from cops? When did that happen?
I was in high school and in Orlando, you're like 25, 30 minutes away from Cocoa Beach. And so a group of friends and I, we had met a lovely group of people who had come down for the summer, and we would see them occasionally. And we had snuck into the Ron John Surf Shop Hotel's hot tub, Like we had found a way to kind of like jerry rig the lock and get in.
Oh,
and
you,
so
like,
we were
really
kind of the cool
snuck in.
guys who were like,
This is
"Yeah."
very Outer
Yeah.
Banks, by the way.
I
Yeah.
know. Like,
Ron
wasn't telling
John's
the
surf
story.
shop?
that a
There
real
is some
place?
parallels
Yeah.
between good old Johnny B and me. So yeah, we had snuck into the hot tub, and security came, and the only thing that I grabbed was my flip flops, and sprinted for I don't know how. It felt like 16 hours. You know, it felt like I sprinted through the night and the
Yeah.
next day. It was probably like 6 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was that story, and
Okay.
it was just kind of the quintessential endless summer kind of moment.
Yeah.
Did you have long hair?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I actually
just wondering.
Blowing in the wind.
I had your haircut, truthfully.
Oh
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh,
we had
cool.
we had a thing our senior year where me and my buddies, we buzzed our heads and kind of did like the swimmer's look where you like shave your armpits and your legs.
Oh wow.
And I have the legs of Frodo from The Hobbit.
What does that mean?
So-
Are
Wait,
they-
what does that mean?
Are they thick, big,
Little
Sure.
bushy.
Oh, okay,
Get a little-
okay.
Get a little
Talking about
insulation.
hair here. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
No, I
not
had-
sure. Is it
Where are we
proportion to
going
the
with this?
torso
Just
or?
wondering the same.
Yeah, a little context would have
Right,
been
right,
good.
right.
Chase.
No. You made sense. I'm just.
Yeah.
So staying in high school just a bit
Mhm.
longer. I guess I'm curious about your transition from sounds like being full on sports.
Yeah.
And then having I guess was it a knee injury,
It was a rotator cuff.
rotator cuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um.
Current knee injury, actually.
Okay.
Long story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just curious about like how much of a disappointment or a break or like a frustration that was, and then how acting
Mhm.
came into your life.
Yeah. I had actually gotten a concussion and rotator cuff injury in the same play, and that turned into me saying this is not feasible. I also was not academically like solid whatsoever. So I was at the points where I was getting recruited to play at the next level, but I was never going to get into Yale with a 2.5 GPA. Like it just wasn't going to happen. And a lot of the hockey schools were in that space. So after I'd gotten that injury and had the hard conversation, I realized I had to realign to something else. I was a senior in high school. And I told myself going into my senior year, if I'm not playing hockey, I'm going to have the best last year of high school that I could possibly imagine. And how I found acting was I had been taking television production as my first period. So I was producing the morning announcement, and I would go out and shoot commercials. That was my first period. And I just took it as an easy A because I truthfully needed the class to graduate. My GPA was so bad. And we had one of the girls who was an anchor, she got sick, and they said, Chase, you got to get on the desk. You're doing the show. And I was like, no, I'm not. Absolutely not. Because you're the only one who knows to run a show right now. You have to do this. And it's a 10-minute warning. So like go put on one of the smelly teenage like button-up shirts and do this. And I just said, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to make fun of myself. That was my self-deprecating humor. And I did it. And people were like, wow, you're kind of funny. You kind of did pretty well at that. And I was like, okay, whatever. And we just continue to make these commercials. And then there's a commercial market there. And that same girl who got sick, her brother got strep over the holidays. And she was like, will you do this commercial with me and my family? And their whole family was the cool commercial people who did like the Universal Ride videos for the Mummy and the Disney catalogs. And I did it. And I made like $300 and got a free Disney ticket. And I was like, oh shit, this is cool. And then that's where the whole idea sort of started to take shape. That's where the whole concept of, oh, maybe this is a career was $300.
How long was the period from, that injury and that kind of realization about your path into, realizing this could be a path? I'm just curious, like how long did you feel sort of like, did you feel adrift? Did you think about the future in a way with hope? Did you think about it in a way with fear or, anything in between?
I think there was definitely a lot of fear because I was watching a lot of people in my close life get the letter of acceptance or get the scholarship to go play sports or talking to friends back home who are back in Georgia who I'd still stayed in touch with. They're getting into the schools of their choice. And I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a single plan. I was avoiding it at all costs, whether it be community college, whether it be any viable career. I kind of had Peter Pan syndrome a little bit. I had had so much fun my senior year that I didn't know what to do next. It was like right in that period of time to where I said, I either need to figure it out because I'm still not doing great in college. I'm still failing classes, or go for it. Just commit to the idea. And I did. I pulled my, like a rabbit out of a hat. I basically used IMDb Pro, and they used to have all the agents' emails on there. And I made a fake Gmail pretending to be a manager. And I emailed everyone at CAA, WME.
Oh, wow.
You name it. And I was just like, hey, I've got this great young kid from Orlando, Florida, and here's some headshots that like a friend took.
That is amazing.
And one person responded. And that was what sort of opened the door for the career.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I got on the phone.
So at this point, you're how old are you?
I was 19 turning 20.
Okay.
So it was like a 2-year period from, I would say, 17 and 19 to where I was doing odd end jobs. I was trying to figure it out. I was making terrible like little short films with friends from TV production, and taking just like the general basic classes at a community college. And then you would take your elective. You would get like one cool class, and it was screenwriting. And that's where it really started to, and that's where I learned about things like IMDb, and I learned about
Fake managers.
I was like, oh, you need an agent. Got it. That's how I get on Gossip Girl. Shit. It was, and so I just committed to this bullshit idea, and that's how I got my first agent.
Did you have an agent before you went to LA? Is that?
Yeah. So he had responded, and he said, okay, I'll give him a shot. Here's a self-tape. And I was like, what is a self-tape? What does that mean? And he sent me a self-tape for The Vampire Diaries. And I went out and shot. I got my buddies and some cameras, and we shot the whole scene in the woods. And so I like literally shot it like a scene.
You went to the woods. Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so I shot like wides, came in, did coverage, like dirty overs. Yeah, because I fell in love with film. And I sent it to him, and he was like, I don't know what this is. But this is the most effort I've ever seen put into a self-tape in my entire career. So he said, let's get on the phone. And mind you, I'm still pretending to be the manager.
Yeah, right.
And we got on the phone, and I was like, I'm a liar immediately. Hadn't even introduced myself as the fake manager.
This is like the kiss with Kelsea.
Yeah, yes.
It
Literally
is
just
like,
I'm a liar. Please don't hang up. Please don't hang up. And so he was like, you need to come to LA. Like if you can,
you're a liar.
You belong here. Come on to Hollywood, baby.
Have you considered?
I got a couch to sleep on. So I came out to LA, and just got into class because I didn't know what I was doing. My like education was the actors roundtables and actors on actors and anything I could find on YouTube, because there isn't like a ton of acting classes in Central Florida, believe it or not. Shocker. And then I came on out.
So that was around the time you were 20, and then were you like 25, 26 when you got Outer Banks?
I was 26.
Wow.
What happened between 20 and 26?
A lot. He got me an agent in the Southeast, and I was doing commercials, like really like money, like the whole, you go in and get your check and then they give you an advance, like the money advance type of stuff. Did a commercial for like Wawa, the gas station. And I was just doing little odd and end sort of stuff like that. And then I would go out to LA, and then I would come back, and then I would go out to LA and come back. And then I finally committed to going out full time. And it was rough. Like I slept in the parking garage under the LA Fitness and on Hollywood and Highland.
Yeah.
I made friends in acting class, and they would let me sleep on their couch. So I'd like up in NoHo in the Arts District and that fun area. And then I got a job catering through a friend. And then I finally was able to get my own place. And so I lived up in Studio City. But it was just a lot of auditioning, staying in class, learning about how to actually do the craft, and not letting that consistent, like, oh, he's great, but he's green, getting that feedback for a while. So a lot of no's over that period of time.
That's so cool.
So before you land John B, you auditioned for the role that Steve Harrington got on Stranger Things. Was that?
I did.
And you bombed the audition? Is that? Could you tell us that story?
Yeah. So going through the self-tape process, you do the auditions, and at this time, I was in LA, and I would do this thing to where, because I lived in the Southeast, or my parents were, if you're in Florida, you can be a regional hire, which essentially means you can get hired and they'll pay you less than they would to fly you from LA. And so I'd done the audition for actually Charlie Heaton's character, Jonathan, and they were like, not right, but maybe this other character. So I did the self-tape, sent it in, and they said, hey, we would love to see him in person. So through the ways of the world, I'd ended up back in Orlando seeing family at the time. So I drove up from Orlando to Atlanta. I was so nervous because it was like one of the first times I'd ever been in an actual soundstage or on a back lot. And I go in, and it's just a room of people all staring at you. And I didn't say a word. I literally did not say a single word. And I just looked at everybody and they go,
Oh.
okay. And I walked out, and I sat in my car, and I called my agent, and I was like, please let me get back in. God.
So hang on. You didn't say anything.
Froze.
Like, you got out
I
there.
froze.
And to the degree that they were just also silently acknowledging, like, you're freezing.
Yeah.
No one said anything.
No. The
And
only
then-
thing that they said was, okay.
Okay.
Aw.
Wow.
And
And just to be clear, so because like I've been in every range of strange audition situations, you're in a soundstage, so you're not in a casting office.
No.
So you're at a stage where they're doing that, which means
it is.
I think for our listeners, what that means is that there's serious interest, right? So they're really so when you know that you're going in, the
level of
feeling,
pressure.
the feeling of going on to a sound stage when you've not been in one much, because they're very tall, right? They're literally, actually, I'm remembering you being shoved up against the lockers by the kid. Like, you're just like feeling so much smaller than what's happening.
Yes.
And then was it very empty inside? Because like there's just, because you're not getting filmed by like a proper camera, right? It's still like so it's like
the
it's this
VHS
weird
thing on a tripod for whatever reason.
That sounds like it could have crushed your spirit. And so you come out and you said, get me back in? Is that what you said?
I said, get me back in.
Wow.
I called
and he's
him.
like, well, bro, you're right there. Just go.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what you would assume you would do. Just give me another shot, please. Walk in the door. And I think I just felt so embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just the casting directors. It was the Duffer Brothers. It was
so that's
the
big they were in
Netflix
there,
executives. Like it was a full-on test, essentially, for this role. And I just said, please, I don't want to drive back to Florida and not give this another shot. And he called and they said, yeah, no, we're okay.
Aww.
And so I drove
Chase, that's
8
so
hours
crushing.
back to my mom's house in silence. Just
you drove for 8 hours in silence. You didn't listen to the radio.
no, I was so in shambles because it felt like the closest I had gotten to anything at that point.
Yeah.
It was fucking devastating.
Okay, the wildest part about this story is that your audition for John B was in front of the same executives at Netflix.
Yeah.
How? Like, tell us that sort of
And they were like,
what a redemption
you have
arc.
lines this time.
Yeah. They're like,
Like that guy.
you want ours? You can take ours. You can take ours. So a little bit before that, I'd started working and I'd booked enough jobs to sort of have a version of a sustainable income, which is actually not at all what it was. But I made the choice. I said, I'm not going to go back to working at a restaurant. I'm not going to work behind a bar. This is my job. This is my career. I'm not doing it. And that set me back into like a substantial amount of debt. And by the time I'd gotten to Charleston, my bank account had overdrafted and all this shit. My mom sent me some money to get an Uber. And I walked in, did the audition the first day. And they were like, great, cool. So come back tomorrow and we're just going to look over the material. The next day will be the network test. So we'll have the executives in and, we'll do that whole thing. We just want to prepare you. So I felt good because they kind of at least told me to prepare. I show up the next day and Jonas Pate, who's the creator and directs the majority of our show, he comes in and he goes, "Hey, surprise." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Surprise, they're all here." In the conference room. I didn't want you to over prepare because I think if you were to do that, you would be too in your head. I was like,
I hear you freeze every now and then. So.
yeah, little birdie over there remembered you. Surprise. So I'm standing there like, all right, okay. Like I feel good enough to do this. And I walk in and I saw the executives that were in the room for Stranger Things. And I was like, oh, I'm so fucked. Like I'm so screwed. There's nothing about this that's going to go over well. And so I ended up just kind of just shutting up for a second and saying, you know what? You've already done the absolute worst case scenario before. It can't be any worse. And so I did the first scene and I was so in my head.
Yeah, and I want for listeners who have never done this before, your ability to perform, to act, is so incredibly reduced, so impossibly reduced. Like you have no talent. When you're nervous like this, you become the worst version of yourself.
Yes.
As a dare I say artist, it's just like it's not there.
Nothing.
It's just not there. So it's very painful.
And did the executives remember you?
Yeah, I got like that awkward like
You again.
Well, at least they said something this time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They said words. They're like, we're gonna break the ice here. We're gonna say them.
Hi. We could do better too. Hi.
They're like, how about we start with a slate?
How are you?
Name and height. Can we get that out of the way first, so we have something to go off of? Yeah, and we did the first scene, and I was so in my head that I literally stopped and I said, "Can I take a second? Just take a second." And I walked out of the room, and I knew that I was at the tail end of the mom conversations of saying, one more month. And I sat on the curb and I just started sobbing because I thought I failed. I thought this is it. This is where this whole idea of being an actor, or being an artist, or working in this industry, this is it. It had all come down to this moment, and I had nothing left, and I'm sitting on a curb in Charleston, South Carolina, just done. And Jonas came out, and by the grace of whatever higher power you want to believe in, he just looked at me and he saw me and said, "I don't know what's going on right now, but whatever version of you that this is, I want to work with that kid. So if you can bring any bit of what you're doing right now into that room," he goes, "I'm going to fight for you."
Aww.
And I went back in
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah, and that was enough for me to feel like somebody believed in me as an artist to say, okay, I'm gonna just wing it from here. And it ended up working out. And I never went back to LA. I didn't even have clothes with me. So I had the
You did this whole thing naked. That's really, I mean,
That's why I got
I took the term "look at them naked" to a whole different level. I was like, "Hi, I'm Chase. I'm 6 foot something, and I'm naked, reading for the role of John B." Shirtless.
That's really a testament to how much Jonas wanted you and saw something in you. I mean, because you're not always going to get that second chance.
No, God, no.
From a creator,
Yeah. Well, I think too, there's so many options, and I'm very aware that my physical attributes, there's a lot of guys that look like me in this business who are far more talented than me, and they could have reopened that casting process and gone a different direction. And there was another option there, and he was a gorgeous human being, and he had a beautiful accent, and I thought for sure that he was going to get the job. We go through the audition process, and it was a very unconventional way of going about it. They had multiple John B's, they had multiple JJ's, they had us all mixing and matching, and it was hours of it. And so we got in the car. Rudy, who plays JJ, actually ordered the Uber because he had already he had been there, so he had gotten a relocation fee. I don't know. It was this weird thing where he was getting paid to be there. I still don't understand it. I was waiting for that on my side. So we all hitched a ride with him, and I saw Rudy get a call, and he played it very quiet. He was like, okay, thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye. And he hung up and didn't, just kind of like shrugged his shoulders and was like, okay. I then feel my phone vibrate, and I'm sitting on the passenger side behind him, and it's Jonas, and he goes, go get tan, dude. Like, you got the job. Like, and I was like, oh my God. And I hung up because the kid was sitting next to me.
You froze.
Aww.
I froze again.
Yeah.
It seems to be a trend in my life. Just,
No, but you were also being compassionate.
Yeah.
well, he
Yeah.
asked, he was like, did you get it? And I was like, no. Different situation, different job.
You probably heard him.
Yeah, it was so obvious. Like it was Jonas has such a specific voice, and my phone was on full volume.
Yeah.
You know,
It's on speaker.
yeah. I've got a Bluetooth speaker actually, and so he for sure knew, but I tried to not be that guy who celebrated too soon. And Rudy just turned around and looked at me and he goes, I was like,
So
Aww.
was it the three of you?
just the
So
three
this
of us.
poor man.
Yeah.
It's
He's
on
like,
like a
I'm the only
20-minute
one who
Uber
didn't
ride.
get this fucking show. All right, cool.
Booking is
Hope you
fine.
guys have fun
Yeah.
on this job. I will be going home.
Chase, you have so many exciting projects coming up. Let's just stay on Outer Banks a little bit longer.
Sure.
I have two questions, I guess. One is is it season 2 in the jungle?
Yeah, we shot season 2 in Barbados.
What was that experience like?
Insane. It was also during COVID too, so it was a little bit bizarre.
Season 2 was also during COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
realize.
we were one of the first 3 shows back in the industry during COVID. I think a lot of that was this, we always call it like the little boat show that could within the cast. And we've always felt like sort of just on the side with Netflix.
You've always felt like the Pogues.
Yeah, literally. We are a walking, talking Pogue in the world of Netflix. And they were like, yeah, maybe this is probably a fluke of a show. Like, you guys just give it a whirl. And if you don't make it through COVID, then there's not a big loss for them because we're not a super expensive show budget-wise. And our UPM was one of the people who wrote the whole guidebook on how to operate during COVID. Like, we were flying by the seat of our pants.
Wow.
But it was a trip. When the show started, to think that we were going to travel and do the things that we've done, you never in the first 10 scripts did I see that coming. But Barbados, it's such a cool island. The people are so awesome. They've sort of adopted us, which was really, really sweet. So lifelong friends who I still stay in touch with down on the island. And also Rihanna's from there. So that's pretty
Bragging
badass.
rights for the world.
Yeah.
You talked about injuries on set. Did some of those happen in Barbados?
Sure did. Yeah. I did get a concussion in Barbados. I also tried to do like a cool Dukes of Hazzard slide across a cop car at one point. Totally misjudged the distance and dented the cop car with my ass cheek. And that was black and blue for a long period of time. But no, we did a stunt, plane crash, and then we're filing out of the plane. And Rudy, who plays JJ, again, we are kind of Tweedledee and Tweedledum in the show and in real life. He's like, hey, dude, I'm going to throw you a bone on this take. And I'm like, what? He was like, just go with it. I'm like, okay, here we go. And so everybody's filing out. And Rudy has some of the best physical comedy I have ever experienced. And 2% of it makes the show, but it's just insane to watch in person. And everybody's falling into the water. And this kid just shoots himself out of the plane as hard as he could. And it's the doors open up and out. And so I'm holding it out. Everybody's kind of going into the water. And he goes, and I was like, oh my, what? Like, flies out. And I didn't realize that the door had left my hand. And so the door came back and hit me straight in the head and knocked me out cold.
Oh my God.
And I was in like 6 inches of water in this plane. And one of our camera operators, they have the footage. And he just like whips over and I'm like this. And he's like, oh shit. And I came to, jumped out of the plane, swam
With a
20 yards.
concussion.
Yeah, finished the take.
Wow.
And then our director was like, you good? And I was like, yeah. Bleh. Just immediately threw up. And they're like,
Whoa.
get him to the hospital.
Wow.
So that was a fun fun journey of an injury.
So I mean, it's a really physical show. You spend so much time in the water. Have you spent, how much, do you spend a lot of time in water tanks, or are you doing a lot in like open water?
It's all open water. We've really only shot, I think in total over the 4 seasons, I think we've only had 5 set pieces of all of the water work that has been on a tank.
Right.
And it's built on, we call it our stages. It's really like a abandoned Walmart type of situation, because it's the Southeast, like sometimes they just create a soundstage. And we have an incredible group of people behind the scenes on the show. And so they built a tank for us. And we've done all sorts of fun water work in that.
So much water work. It can be really exhausting. I mean,
Super.
Like, what's nice is that when you're in the water, you're supposed to be in the water. So you're like swimming actively. I think there's drowning scenes that, the only water work I've done, I was with weights. I've been fully clothed with boots and pants and long shirt and loaded with weights, so that I'm at the bottom of the tank for like many hours at a time, which is a different kind of weird.
Whoa.
It's
never
surreal.
had to do that.
So I was curious about your water work, because it's like my one experience with it, I was like, this shit is crazy. This is so insane that they let actors do this. And I was watching this thinking like of how knowing how like relatively green you all were, like coming in and young. I was just like, they let these kids get in this water all the time on camera. Like, ooh. But it sounds like you have, there's like this kind of organic, open vibe on set, because you're in real water.
Yeah. I mean, we shoot on location, I would say 90% of the time.
That's interesting, man. That's
And
really interesting.
It's fun. It makes it really, really engaging. I think anytime you're on location, you just feel more
it feels so much.
world.
Yes. And I was actually thinking that watching that, I know how budgets can look bigger than they are.
Yeah.
But I was impressed by just the sprawling world of the Outer Banks that you see right from the get-go, and how like on location it all is, and how just you guys are like right from the outset, it's like an action movie.
Yeah.
In this interesting part of the world that like I've never known. It's really like kind of exotic feeling.
It is. Yeah. The Outer Banks in itself is sort of a world in its own. In Charleston, where we shoot, is just such a beautiful city. So we kind of luck out with having the most beautiful backdrop for just cinematically to begin with. And then you add in all the water work, and it's just kind of a match made in heaven. But it is really cool to kind of look at the show through the lens of what it is. Even to this season, we still run and gun guerrilla style often.
And so it feels that way.
Yeah, it's like shooting a student film sometimes.
Yeah.
It's the same operators from season 1. It's the same directors. It's the same sound department. I mean, it's like a little family. And so it
sounds fun. I mean, do you guys all
that
feel
does
like
sound
you
fun.
It's a
love
blast.
doing it?
Yeah, like it really is a blast. It's hard work, like you were saying. It is a physically demanding show.
You're in an action movie like 10 times a season, basically.
I was thinking it's amazing
like 10
that you
action
loved
movies in
Indiana
one.
Jones, because in a way you got
Yeah, I
so
call myself like
close.
the Walmart Indiana Jones.
Right.
Like I'm the wannabe indie. And if Harrison ever let go of that role, he won't. But yeah, it's such a fun thing, because you do get that all, like you were saying, you get all of these beautiful elements of filmmaking in a place where you don't traditionally see films being made. The last notable film, ironically, that was in Charleston was The Notebook, that Cassavetes shot, and everybody kind of fell in love with the backdrop of that. So it's just fun. We have a blast doing it. The city is a great food town too. So if you're a foodie, it's kind of the best. But it's been a fun run, and a really great place to kind of dip your feet into the world of making film and TV.
The new season is out this week. Can you share one favorite behind the scenes memory from shooting this season?
Oh gosh. It's out in the world, but it's part of the second half of the season, but we shot in Morocco this year. And that was...
And is it meant to take place there?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah. And that was just such a crazy experience, and just where it takes these characters, and to be able to look back at the show. And the first scene that I shot was with Rudy, and I come out of the house and I throw him a beer as we're waking up, and then we go on the boat to go fish. And then to jump forward 5 years later and to be landing in Morocco and be in like the Sahara Desert, shooting the same show. that was kind of a trip. I mean, this whole season is fun for a number of reasons, but I think that and having the cast and continuing to travel the world was really cool.
Were there any other stories of like just the extremity of being in the desert, shooting in the desert, which is something I've never done? I would imagine that can be quite challenging.
I mean, like sandstorms, you don't have the conveniences of what you would have shooting here, especially when you're driving out 45 minutes to an hour into the desert to go shoot, and then driving another 20 minutes to go get to a location, and driving through riverbeds and 4x4s just to get to where you need to go to just to not even base camp. It's like your holding area. But we did a similar version of that in Barbados, and doing it again in Morocco was pretty cool.
You're entering this sort of second chapter of your career. It seems like you have a number of movies that are coming out. And I'm curious, what are you excited for in this second chapter?
Oh, I think I've been so fortunate to play John B for an extended period of time, and it's been the most beautiful ground to learn how to be a better artist. I think TV, because of the pace that you shoot at, and in particular with Outer Banks, we shoot so fast. It's taught me so much of how to craft a character in a way that I didn't know how to do, and to operate on a set at a high level. So I think for me now, understanding story better, understanding character better, understanding the filmmaking process, I'm just excited to tell new stories. I think for me, it was always about chasing stories and growing up listening to great storytellers in my family. My stepdad is an incredible storyteller. That's always been what I've loved. And to be able to get to this next chapter and have the time and the space and the freedom to go and tell those stories is really exciting to me.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about Marked Men or Valiant One? I mean,
Sure.
those are a little bit on the horizon, right?
Yeah, Valiant One comes out end of January. Marked Men we don't have a date for yet. But Valiant One is about a kind of like the modern tech soldier, sitting behind a desk on a base in South Korea. He gets a call to go check on a ground penetrating unit that detects seismic activity, and realizes very quickly that something is not right in a weather pattern. Helicopter crash happens, and they are stranded in North Korea and have to get to the extraction point. And now my character is the highest ranking out of everybody who has survived the crash. So he starts his day at a computer desk and is now responsible for others' lives. So it's kind of a little bit of a non-traditional military film. It's definitely more, I guess, kind of like the unsung hero's journey would be the best way to put it. But it was fun. It was great. I worked with Lana Condor, who has become a dear friend of mine. And again, just telling a new story in a different space and in a different way. And then Marked Men was with Nick Cassavetes, who did The Notebook. And it was based on a New York Times bestselling book. We had a little bit of freedom to kind of create a version of the book. It's still very true to what it is, but Nick is just one of the great storytellers of our generation, and he's so interesting in the ways that he ebbs and flows from The Notebook to Alpha Dog to he just did a film this past year called God is a Bullet, and it is just like so vastly different in the stories and the sort of the themes of the film. So to be a part of a film that he is going back into the romance sort of genre, so to speak. This is his first romance film since The Notebook. Was fun, but also he's become like family to me. And to be able to work with a filmmaker that I've admired for a long time to now getting coffee with him tomorrow and just catching up on life and doing that consistently doesn't make any sense in my brain. Like, why would Nick Cassavetes want to hang out with me? Or
You think you're going to go to coffee tomorrow and just freeze?
Probably. He's going to be like, hey, buddy, how are you? Try to give me a hug. I'll be like,
You're freezing again. You're doing it. You're
Chase,
freezing.
Stop, relax.
I think we've come to a natural resting place. So we will ask you our final question. If you could go back to your 12-year-old self, what would you say or do, if anything?
Wow. I would This is a thing I do in therapy often. Actually, it's called the Dear Me exercise, and that's tattooed on my hand because of that. I would put my hand on his shoulder and I would tell him that I know that there's a lot of confusion and cloudiness in life right now, but all of this will service you at some point. So there's no advice. There's nothing I need to tell you. Just step by step and keep doing the next right thing. And it all works out.
Yeah.
It's all going to be pretty cool.
That's touching. I like the hand on the shoulder. Thank you, Chase.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
Thank you so
guys.
much for coming through.
No, thanks for having me. This has been great. This is fun.
Your first podcast.
Yeah, you guys did it. I'm like,
We did it.
We are so excited that you can now listen to Podcrushed ad-free on Amazon Music. In fact, you can listen to any episode of Podcrushed ad-free right now on Amazon Music with an Amazon Prime membership.
I'm just going to sit cross-eyed,
Yeah.
just float off like that Chris Pratt blooper where Amy Poehler's talking to him. She's like, I need the briefcase. He's like, okay. Silver hair?
There are so many good Chris Pratt Parks and Rec
Oh my
scenes.
gosh.
Like I love to just go on YouTube, do like best of Andy Parks and Rec.
Oh.
That's my favorite.
I actively would use those bloopers and laugh and try to do the Stairmaster at the same time.
Really?
Oh wow.
Because I would laugh and then I'd start
Yeah.
sweating from laughing. And then I would be doing
Such a good
cardio
idea.
too.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting combo.